All right, here we are in the studio. I have the Tegan and Sarah remix I did for their song called Alligator up, and I'm going to give you a little overview of how I put this together. With all the tracks, I start with Stylus RMX, just because I like the drum sounds, and I use a lot of the sort of syncopation features of the new version of Stylus. I really like the Logic 16C and 16D, so I'll usually quantize stuff to that. Start out straight, kick and snare. I like little sort of chunky, textural, sort of nutty little sounds like this. So that's a loop. I cut it up in Stylus, sort of EQ'd it hard, changed the envelope, maybe changed the pitch envelope of it a little bit for a little contrast. So even if it starts out as another loop, I'm changing the timbre of the sound, so it just sounds like something new. So I kind of call these like organic loops, so there's a few of them. These are all 16C. So let's sort of move the groove and basically create that sort of tension, the rhythmic tension in the track. And the hi-hats maybe are just sort of pushing it along. This one's still sort of a pulling hi-hat. And there's a shaker to fill it out. Those are all Stylus loops. One of them's a little more obvious than the others. The other ones are a little more processed. So also I'm doing that trick with the pink noise, using that as a layer. I think it's kind of quiet on this part. I'm using that. A lot of what I like in Pro Tools is using the automation, so I have very specific envelopes. I'm using it almost like a synthesizer and creating an envelope and then repeating it. Just got a very precise way of doing the envelopes. So that's what I'll do for white noise and pink noise, and even with sort of shaping the kicks. Maybe I'll draw a different envelope for the kick so it decays differently. This one's got a little white noise that pulls it along. Sort of your standard dance music trick. So one is sort of pulling, and one is a sweeper that's a build, sort of a transitional build. So in the intros, I like to have it so there's not a lot of chord changes, just to make it DJ friendly. With every remix, it's a fairly different process than doing the original. So I usually have some sort of chopped up vocals with a little delay for some space, and gradually building these elements in, maybe filtering the pads so they sort of sweep in. I really like the stabby sound, so that's coming from the Prophet. But it starts out, sort of subtly comes in. You're just hearing this sort of syncopated bleepy sound. And I think there's a little drone. Just for texture. So I'm using some lo-fi effects. Maybe drive, a lot of times I like to take the SSL channel, drive the inputs hard, push the EQ, and then just use that as sort of a way to add a little flavor, a little color to it. So it starts out very sparse, just with those vocal chops. And the chords gradually build. I love these little bleepy sounds. They just help push it along, and the melodic. That's I think that's either the Tetra or the Prophet. And it's something I just love about looped piano sounds. I really like that too with like the Mike Snow remix. It's the remix that Ingrosso and Dirty South did of Sylvia. And also the Joris Voorn stuff where he loops piano. It just has a cool organic effect. So I took the original piano out of the Tegan and Sarah, crushed it a little bit, filtered it, did some side chaining, put it through some amps. This is actually a really good amp modeler. It's just a free one, and it's really old, but it's really good. So that's Sounds amp. Now in this breakdown, the cool thing I did, I wanted to do some manual automation. So I recorded the Voyager doing this sort of octave sweep. It's like your classic build, and then did 4 different passes, detuned it a little differently, did it at different speeds each time. So it does this sort of whipping bass effect, so it goes whoop at the end. So we'll hear that. It's slowly building in. And those chords are coming from the Prophet. So I'm going to solo that for you so you can hear. And basically it's the sound, it's almost like that THX sound where the oscillators are sort of rubbing against each other. You can hear it sort of slowly build up. So it's not perfect, but adds a little flair to it. So that's a fun little effect. But it's always sort of nerve-wracking when you're twisting the knob. You want to get it just right. You don't want to have to keep doing more and more passes, but those little imperfections can kind of add to the record sometimes. It's a good example of a song that, you know, works in the club. It's still melodic. It's not just a one-note bass line the whole song. It's a nice balance. I mean, it's not a full-on peak track. So with this track, I started with a beat, did a chord progression after laying down the vocal. Usually I just isolate just the lead vocal for the start of the track, and then you can just see what works, see what the syncopation is like, what key the song's in. You know, sometimes if it's a major key with dance music, it takes a little more finessing to find something that works. But I always want to find a new chord progression that takes the song in a new direction. So it's a different order than the process of doing original tracks. I want to have something that just gives it a different feel, a different life, but keeps a little of the integrity at the beginning of the original track. So what I'll do, just beat, lay the vocal, build the chord so it complements the vocal, then start doing these lead lines and bleepy sounds and bass lines. So you can hear the stabs. There's the stabs. It's a little sort of a small room reverb on there. And then sort of a slow decay because of the sidechain. I'm using the Glue, which is an awesome plugin. That's worked pretty hard. I love these plugins too, Brainworks Digital. Use the clean sweep a lot on the new stuff. But I like that contrast. You have your stabby sound, you have your more pumping synth, and bass line. It's the Voyager. breakdown here. It's got your standard white noise blasts. Automation is just stock EQ. And I'm also using that automation to build up the chords. So it starts this abyss and sounds rise out of it. I love these sort of transitional turnaround moments where just stuff to kind of keep the crowd on their toes. And so, you know, the MIDI is really good in Logic, but for syncopation in Pro Tools, it has come a long way. I can bring in those sort of groove templates from Logic or other programs. But you can also use the one in Stylus, which I love. There's sort of a groove lock, and you can start with something straight and move into swing or a shuffle very easily. Obviously, you want to quantize stuff and sort of stick to sort of one mode of quantization, but they've got some other ones in here that are really cool. Emulate the MPC, the SB1200, 909. And it's got all the Logic stuff in there, different feels, Afro shuffle, you know, blues shuffle. And you know, I mainly stick to swing. It's really hard to mix in shuffle tracks, unless maybe some pop stuff. You may want more of a shuffle in there, but I really like to just stick with swing. And it's cool because you can really get into the groove, and actually see that, okay, it's every 2 notes it's moving at this, you know, 1/64th of a note, or however precise you want it to be. It's been an amazing plugin, and a lot of people overlook it. I think it's a big standard. You know, a lot of guys, you hear the loops, and too many people will use the stock loops. And even some of the biggest producers, you're like, I can't believe that they didn't disguise it somehow. But using the filters, using the quantization, just the fact that you can resyncopate everything in that library, it makes a huge difference. So I'll go in and change around the envelopes and the pitch and the filter until I get a texture that I like, and then be tweaking those in real time while I have the syncopation set. That makes a really big difference in building a track. So every template I've got, it starts with Stylus. That's the first window I see. And then I move on to more processing and sidechaining of it later on. I don't leave it running like with multiple parts. I just do record a pass of it and bust it out each time. So it's like, you know, kick and snare and syncopated sounds, hi-hats later on, and cut those into 8-bar loops. So I have a loop I can play here to show you how that syncopation works. So if I play it, this is just the straight way, but if I want to hear it with a swing, it's a little groovier. It's got a little more space in it. And then I can go in and really sort of mess with the filters if I want. Let's see. A lot of times I'll, really push the filters hard and emphasize just the frequencies that I want. Maybe add a little drive. Just got a little chunkiness to it. And there's really high quality pitch shifting in here too. It's nice. Or reverse it. So I like that. Already you have a lot more color and flavor, and then maybe I'll throw that in, process it with SSL or the glue or API. What else do I have in here? I really like Chandler. Go in there and really drive it hard if I need to. Or there's the Fairchild plugins. And maybe I'll leave it on while sort of auditioning the sound. It's also fun, you can map those controls to a nice like cheap controller like this, and it adds a really cool organic quality to it. I'll show you a few of the other sort of syncopation ways you can use it. So if I was doing shuffle, it's just like with any other sort of sequencer. But if I want to, you can get in there and see exactly what it's doing, how it's moving the notes around. Let's try another shuffle. And you can do it, half it down or double it. Sometimes you get a better timbre by really changing the speed a lot. That's how I use stylus in there.